this computer last time. We're recording now. All right, welcome to the Craft of Code episode 2. This time we're going to be focusing in on VS Code with the purpose of kind of showing you some of the features that you maybe haven't seen before, as well as kind of going over some of my most used shortcuts. Again, the purpose is kind of the better you know your tools, the faster you are with the keyboard shortcuts, the less you're going to get distracted from tackling whatever piece of coding you're doing right now at that moment. But also, if you're not using keyboard shortcuts and whatnot all the time, that's much lower priority than understanding the topics, getting the code done. I'd highly recommend this just being something that you think about as you're going like, oh yeah, okay, I could use that keyboard shortcut. And as you go, you like think this shortcut, I'm gonna like practice using that today. Like I'm using that a lot today, and kind of add 1 or 2 at a time, because it can get really overwhelming to like always be like, oh, what's the shortcut? Oh, what's the shortcut? So don't focus on that. You'll learn them as you go. Purpose here is to just show you a few of them, expose you to them, and as you progress through the course, I hope that you'll start using some of them in your day-to-day coding, and hopefully it'll make your life easier. So first, just a quick overview of what VS Code is. Can everybody see this kind of text okay? Okay, see my screen okay. Okay, so we've got VS Code over here. And can you see my mouse move around? Okay, great. Right, so I wanted to just get kind of the official names that VS Code gives the different parts of VS Code. So you've got your editor / your editors area, which is the main area here. It's where you're working with your code most of the time. Then you've got your panels. These are down here. This is where your terminal comes up, output if you're using the code runner, as well as the problems panel, if you're not familiar with that. Then there's the activity bar, which is just the gray stripe here on the left. There's the sidebar, which is the darker gray, slightly bigger bar. And then there is a status bar, which is the blue bar down here along the bottom. So VS Code is like a pretty giant, super robust IDE. It's a development environment, and we're really only going to scratch the surface. There's a ton more customization you can do, and I don't want to like prescribe to you like this is the way to do anything, because it's not. This is how I do some of this stuff. But I want to then empower you once you've got some bandwidth and want to explore to really make this tool yours, make it work for you, make it work with your style. So the first thing I just want to go over is your settings and where you can find those. So now I got to put that page over on my other screen so that I can refer to it as we go. All right, so your settings, you can find those over here in the gear icon with settings. That's going to be your VS Code settings. Notice up here that there's 2 different tabs. There's the users tab and there's the workspace tab. So VS Code allows you to have different settings for you as a user, say Michael, versus you working on a specific project. So in this case, I've got the subclass dance party sprint open, and there are some workspace settings. So those would get populated through here, which is kind of the really nice VS Code GUI that they give you to manipulate all the settings. There's a great search bar up here, lets you, you're like, I don't know, something with my white space is off. It's like write white space. You can go and look at that. And this works both in the user and the workspace. But also, all of your settings are just saved as a JSON file. And for those of you that haven't used JSON yet, it looks basically like a JavaScript object. So if you look over here in the inspector, the file explorer actually, you will see a VS Code folder with a settings.json. So these are all settings that Hack Reactor has added to the sprint that are applied to your VS Code when you are working on this repo. You can also see your own settings. I'm using something we'll go over later, which is the, I can't remember what the name of it is, like command palette, maybe something like that. Really quick way to kind of get to anything in here. But if I go to settings, you can see open settings JSON, and there is in fact a big JavaScript object-like thing that has any of my custom settings for me, Colin Shosh, the user. Okay, how are we on the difference between user settings versus workspace settings? Cool. Great, so let us go down to our keyboard shortcuts. So in the README, I'm linking to a page from the docs, which gives you, and I'm sorry for you non-Mac users, this is going to be 100% Mac focused. So if you're running on another system, you may have to do some translations, but the links for Ubuntu or Linux and Windows are also there. This great PDF, and I have it taped to the wall next to me. And it's got coffee stains and food marks on it because it has been with me right in front of me the entire time I've gone through Hack Reactor. So I'd highly encourage you, if you have access to a printer, print this out, have it nearby. It's a really easy way to be like, oh yeah, what's that keyboard shortcut? And this is basically kind of how we're going to go through the project. I just picked out my favorite ones from here. And also I'd encourage you, the VS Code docs have this great getting started feature, lots of cool stuff in there. Lastly, if you open up a brand new VS Code window, there's another great area here for you to explore what VS Code has to offer, which is they have a playground, interactive playground. And if you open that up, it gives you a whole bunch of great examples of many of the features, and you can actually do them right in here. So I'd encourage you to explore that if you find yourself having some time during the program. Okay, so let's go through some of my favorite shortcuts. I'm gonna move this over here. Showing the command panel. Yeah, so this is what we're talking about. This is Shift, Command, and P. VS Code, what's really cool about it for me is through this command panel, you can basically do anything that VS Code can do, any like one thing, like double clicking a file to open it, you can do that through here. You need to tab a line, you can do that through here, right? You can like toggle things, and you can basically search through anything VS Code can do from up here. There's two things I like about it. Obviously, this is super powerful, super awesome. Like you don't need to memorize anything. You can just have like a general idea of like, oh, transform. Oh, it can't transform. Maybe I need to be in a thing. It might be context aware. That's kind of cool. But yeah, if there's any command that you can think of, you just need like the general gist of like, oh, so transform to lowercase. Oh, thank God. Okay, now I've got that. I was never going to remember how to do that otherwise, or where to find that button. You just Command Shift P, type in there. Amazing. And what it also does is it kind of like reminds you that like every single one of these commands is like a little function, and you're just running that function. So I think that's kind of a cool thing, that it makes you kind of see like, oh, right, like the functions we're making, that's kind of like the equivalent of some of this stuff, you know, like expand selection. Like that's just a function that like takes a selection and it expands it. Like somebody wrote that little function and now you're calling it. Great. So I use it all the time, especially for like format documents. Sometimes there's other keys there, but or ESLint. Fix all auto-fixable problems. Sometimes I'll do that. Great, that's that. Quick open files. I think it can be really frustrating, annoying, and kind of confusing to navigate through like the nested file tree over here. So if you do Command P, you can search in here for any file that's within your repo. and open it right from there. So you can do this. You can also, let's see, Blinky Dancer. You can also, I don't know the shortcut for this, so if somebody knows how to do it, you can open it to the side directly from this panel, which kind of handy. So I almost never will dig through here to try and find my file. I'm just going to hit Command P and I'm going to open it. Cool. Let's go to the, I feel like this is a slightly more interesting repo. And you can also see here, there's a bunch of different files named rooms, but it tells you where it's found. So db.schemas rooms is different. So I know which one I'm opening. Okay, so move copy lines up and down. This super handy. Instead of like copying and pasting something, you can actually on the same line just do options up and down, and that'll just move the line up and down. And you can do that with a whole selection. So I can select all of this, move it up and down, and then option and command, that'll copy, or sorry, command shift. Oh God, I should probably look at the actual things. Control command, somebody help me.
To copy?
Yeah.
It's option command and an arrow and the direction you want it to go, I believe.
Yeah, so option and command. Ooh. Oh man.
And control. I don't have a Mac keyboard, but I'm on a Mac, so I'm confused in between option and alt and stuff like that a lot.
Right. And I do this all the time, but now there it is.
It's so option shift.
Option shift, and that'll just copy the same line over and over again, which is really handy. You can delete a whole line with command shift and K, which can be really handy. You don't need to highlight everything. You can just get rid of that whole line a lot faster. Oops, don't delete too much of your code though, because then it'll all break. Indent, outdent a line. If you need to indent or outdent something, instead of going to the start of the line, if you're on the line or the selection, and you do command, use the brackets, left and right, you'll be able to tab this stuff in. And again, you can look at that PDF to reference all of these commands and what the actual shortcut is. Home and end, these are hard buttons on some keyboards. For Mac folks though, if you're working on like a MacBook, you might need to do function left and right to use them. But they're really handy ways to just get to the start and end of a line. So the home and end button, which on a MacBook, you have to do function left arrow or function right arrow. Toggle line comments. Michael, we were practicing this earlier. That's command /, which is really great. Use that all the time. And then you can also do a comment block. So if I need to select something to do a multi-line comment, what's that one like? Something A. Yeah, so that's option shift A, and that'll do an entire block. And it's pretty smart about how it, I guess it's not super smart about how it undoes it, but if you've got at least all the lines in there, you usually can figure out how to take the comment out. Multi-cursor selection. This is like super mind-blowing. You can put multiple cursors in different places so that you can edit multiple lines at the same time. So if I'm up here, if I hold down option and click, anywhere I click, it's going to give me a second cursor. Sometimes you'll be like, okay, yeah, but like now, let's say I want to change the names of all of these and be like, oh, well, but that's annoying because one of them only has 5 letters. So if like I'm deleting, then like I've got some stuff over here. But this works in conjunction with just about any other thing you do. So if I now do command D to select that word, I can now get rid of everything on there. So this can be a really powerful way to like edit a bunch of things at the same time. I hope that Slack message has nothing to do with what I'm doing. And let's see, selecting at the end of every single line. I've done like some quick and dirty data transformation where you're getting like a text file. And if you need to convert it to like a JavaScript array or something, you know, if it's just like 1, 2, just type some random stuff in here. you can very quickly turn this into an array, select it all, give it brackets, and we'll put this on I guess we don't need to. Then we'll take this and we'll do a line with Option Shift I at the end of every single line. You throw a comma in, boom. Now you've got a correctly formatted JavaScript array. So super helpful, quick and dirty data transformation. Select all occurrences of the current selection. That's Command Shift L. Really handy to select everything that has the same name and then put in a cursor. So now you can do like dot something else, dot, whatever in there. Select the current word. I do this a lot. Command D just selects the whole word, and then you can expand that selection from there. If you're also not familiar with kind of like the default Mac selection format, so like if I do Command Shift, I'll highlight all the way to the end of a row. You can also like do, Option Shift, and there you'll go by like, I don't know, it's like chunks, kind of like words, but not exactly. Be a really helpful way to select stuff a little bit faster. Current, expand, and this one's super cool. So this actually is smart, and it will expand your selection depending on like the bracketing and the indentation of your code. And I think this one's like, I like to call these shortcuts the claw, because you've got to touch so many things at the same time. It's Shift, Control, Option, right and left. So you're going to see that it's going to keep getting bigger. So now I've got all the way until the curly bracket, the whole if statement. Now it went to the next curly bracket. And this can be really helpful when like, if I maybe have a whole bunch of options in here. If you use this, it's an easy way to get everything inside of a bracket, inside of parentheses, and you can shrink that too. So that one's really good. Find, Command F, kind of like on every other application you've got. Type whatever you want in here, and you search through the file for every occurrence of that. Pretty straightforward. What maybe people don't know is that there are some other options in here. You can use regular expressions. You can match case and match whole word. You can be a little looser where like maybe you don't care about the case. Then you can also do replace. There's a shortcut to do go right for replace. You can just unfold it from here, and you can then move through and replace whatever you're searching for all at once over here, or one at a time. And if you hover them again, it'll show you there's a keyboard shortcut for replace as enter, or Command Enter will do them all at once right there for you. Now, you may also want to, another kind of nifty trick. Sometimes replace is a little powerful. So like I know that REQ is going to maybe show up a lot in my file, but I only want to get rid of the REQs in a certain section. You can highlight a section and then use this option over here to limit what it's actually going to search through. And sometimes, I will be honest, it's a little bit tricky to make it work correctly. But know that you can do that. And if you do it correctly, it'll shade it all this kind of different shade of gray, at least on my machine. It'll be a different color. And then it'll limit the replace only to what you've selected, which can be really handy. And then find in a file, Command Shift F. This will look through all of your files for something. This can be really handy if you're looking like, oh, where was that function used? Where did I declare X? And it'll show you in your files over here, everywhere that you've used that, and you can click on that, and it'll open your file and take you to that word. Rich language editing, okay. So you've got ESLint and Prettier. Both of these will reformat your code. There are shortcuts for kind of everything you can do. The two options, I guess, are format the whole document, Option Shift and F. And then you can also do it by selection. There are options also to make it so that when you save your file, it'll automatically format your code. I've decided to keep that off because I get very lost when my code like changes shape. So I like to be in control of when that happens. But I know it's definitely a time saver for a lot of people to do it on autosave. Then there is go to and peak definition. Yeah, this is pretty cool. So VS Code is very smart about your code and where you're using it. So if we were to go to, let's see, let's go to our routes. So here we're importing a bunch of stuff from different places. So I might need to be like, oh, what does get rooms do? But I don't want to go and open that file. You can use these peek options and like go to reference to look at the code that defines that function somewhere else in your file. So like Shift F12. Oh, F12 just took me there. Must have used the wrong one. But there's basically 3 different options. One that takes you right there. One of them that will like open up a little window and show you the definition in there, which is option F12. So option F12. And this is pretty cool. It opens up a little window and say, oh, that's where I defined, oh, I exported that there. Okay, so it's in this file and you can go and look in that file. Oh, this is what that does. Cool. Now I'm done with that. Escape. Great, I know what my function does. Rename symbol. I use this all the time. VS Code can smartly change the name of a variable. So let's say this variable, do I use it somewhere else? This one? Somewhere where I use. Okay, we're going to change the response variable. This response variable gets used a whole bunch of times in my file. So if I were to do a find and replace, it might mess up my code somewhere else. If I highlight this, press F2, I can change this to Collins dope var. Now, if I hit enter, only the gray ones over here are going to get changed. If I'm nervous, notice it says enter to preview, shift enter. So if I hit shift and enter, it's going to tell me down here all the places it's going to do that modification, and you can choose which ones you do want it to do. We want it to do all of them, so we're just going to hit enter. Or I guess we're going to touch the check mark. And it smartly did that without affecting the other variables. So use that all the time. Do be careful. It is smart enough to look between files. So be careful. Let's see, cycling through tab history, control tab, shift control tab, different ways to cycle through your various tabs. Highly recommend that if you can, as well as you can do, I think, option, because there's another way. The history one like keeps track of which are your most recent. There's another way to toggle them depending on where they're laid out, doing like left and right. Okay, and then editor management. Do this all the time. You need to look at 2 things side by side. So I might want to look at the rooms controllers and the rooms router at the same time. Command / will open whatever your tab is in the side. Now, depending on how many of these you have open, you can switch your focus between them with command 1, 2, or 3. So I can, do some typing over here. It's all the same file right now, so obviously it's going to show up somewhere, but then I can command 2 over to another one, and now I can do some typing over here. Command W closes our windows. If your tab closes your tabs, if your tab is the last one in one of the editor panes, it's going to close that pane. And then you can do, actually something nice is VS Code has what are called chords. So you might see some shortcuts that have like Command K and then another command. So if you do Command K and then Command W, it will close every open window you have. So be aware that there are chords. So if you see a shortcut that's 2 parts, that's there. We're pretty much out of time. there's some extra links in here about customizing stuff. There's a ton of power. Don't forget about your, what are these called? Panes. Problems pane is very powerful. A lot of stuff you can do in there, as well as the terminal. You can add different terminals, split those terminals. So highly encourage you to do that. Ooh, and if you're working on a README, VS Code has a preview mode for your READMEs that shows you what the markup looks like. And of course, if you ever forget any of these commands, you can just do the all-powerful command palette. Markdown, you can do open a preview, or if you want, you can preview to the side, which is pretty dope. Markdown, open preview to the side, and then these two panes will actually scroll together. And you can see what your README looks like as you type it. Awesome. Hope you found this helpful. Tons of great links in the customizations, especially one that's VS Code. There's a website that's like vscodedoesthis.com. Pretty cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Really helpful.
All right. And we'll off to our next play.